Hey everybody, it's Zach again at new2torah.com, coming in making a video on a topic tonight that I usually get hit with every so often, and it came up this week on my blog, and that is stoning our children. And what does it mean to stone our? Should we stone our children? I get asked time and time again, and people who are new to Torah have been asked, and they don't know how to answer this question because it looks like right here in Deuteronomy that says we should stone our children if they disobey us. All right, let's go over the verse. And before we get into the verse, let me just tell you this. We have to get this idea out of our heads when we get asked this question of these little children coming up who have disobeyed their parents by sticking their hand in the cookie jar when they shouldn't have, and now we have to stone our children. It's very clear in Deuteronomy 6 that we are to raise our children up in the way that they should go, teaching them the Torah, teaching them these ways to instruct them, and so that they will not forget these ways. And they should, learn to live their lives according to this Torah. And so, if we are to instruct our children, that includes disciplining them when they mess up or when they rebel. This is not killing them. This is not stoning them. What we see in Deuteronomy 21 is completely different compared to what we see in Deuteronomy 6 on instructing our children. These are not little kids in Deuteronomy 21 that this topic is addressing. But let's go ahead and read the verse, because you know what? Most people who bring up this topic never even went back to actually read the text to see what it says. Let's go back, read the text, see what it says, examine it, and let's kind of parse it based on the context that it's in. Here we go. Deuteronomy 21, verse 18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them. Verse 19. Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, and unto the gates of his place. And then verse 20. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And verse 21. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. So shall thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. Okay, so here we go. This is the verse. Let's go back, read these verses one by one. There's 4 verses here. We'll read them one by one, and let's examine the context that they're in. Verse 21, chapter 21, verse 18. If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son. Now we have to get this out of our minds. Now, a lot of translations will put child in here, or children. Excuse me. This is not some 4-year-old kid. This is not some 8-year-old, some 12-year-old, some teenager. This is not some little kid. This is talking about an adult. This is talking about a child who is rebellious, who's grown up and who's living out a lifestyle that is contrary to Torah, who is breaking God's law. And what 1 John 3:4 says, sin is transgression of the law. He's living a sinful lifestyle, contrary to what the Father instructs us to live. And so that's what this is right here. And it says right here that has not obeyed the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, and that when they have chastened him will not hearken unto them. This is a son who has grown up and who is being corrected, and he continues to rebel. Now let's also understand that Isaac was 40 years old before he married Rebekah, his wife. It doesn't say he had any other wives, so this is really Isaac under his father's covering here. Okay, this is Isaac under his father's household. And so he's 40 years old. But is he still the son of his father? Of course he is. Absolutely. So what we're seeing here is not some little kid. We're looking at an adult. Someone who's probably over the age of 20, who is counted as a man, and who continues to live in the land of Israel, in the land, and who lives a lifestyle that's contrary to Torah. He's doing the things that pagans do, and not the things that Israelites do, Hebrews do. Let's look at the next verse. Then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city, unto the gate of his place. Okay, so here's the deal. This is mom and dad not taking charge. This is mom and dad taking him to who? The elders. Let's see what happens. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious, and he will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. So here right now, this is not some 12-year-old, okay? Some, Dennis the Menace kid. he's a drunkard. Hopefully you're not putting your kids, you're allowing your kids to have access to a bunch of alcohol, and, he's not getting drunk. I mean, if your kid's 12 years old and he's getting drunk, it's probably your fault. You're the one who needs to be stoned because you shouldn't be allowing your kid to have access to the liquor cabinet, okay? Or the wine bottle. So get the wine bottle away from your kid. This is not kids. This is some adult grown child who's rebelling against the authority of his parents and the authority of Torah. All right, Deuteronomy 20, verse 21. And all the men of the city shall stone him with stones that he die. So shalt thou put evil away from among you, and all Israel shall hear and fear. I see all these people who are like, oh, you believe in stoning people? Yeah, actually it might be a good idea if we stoned a few more people today. These are adults we're talking about here, right? Look at the lawlessness. There's no fear. There's no fear here in this society that we live in. There's no fear at all. We live in a society that's completely fearless of authority. They have no fear of authority whatsoever. They don't fear the cops, and especially if we have an economic breakdown and things go haywire, like I believe we're going to see. Boy, you talk about people who have no fear. It's going to be a very nasty, nasty time, and you better have a way to protect yourself. Here's the deal, folks. We are looking at an adult who is disobeying the Father and disobeying his mother and father, and is disobeying the Heavenly Father, and is living out a lifestyle that he wants to live. And you can't do that in the land. Our Father in heaven says, keep this land holy. This land was to be kept holy, and this son or daughter is not doing that. They're profaning it. They're profaning the land, and that cannot happen. Now, here's the deal. Most people who would choose to live a lifestyle like this and choose to live a lifestyle that is non-Torah would probably go out to live amongst the nations. They would go out to live amongst the pagans. They wouldn't even stay there. They'd be like, you know what, Mom, Dad, I'm sick of your rules. I'm sick of your lifestyle. I'm sick of your Torah, whatever. I'm going out to Jordan, or I'm going to Babylon, or I'm going to Sodom and Gomorrah, or I'm going to Nineveh. They have parties in Nineveh. They had a big rave party up there I heard about. I'm going up there to play with those guys. And so he's not even going to stay. But here's the deal. This command is for a boy or a daughter, son or a daughter who chooses to stay in the land and profane it. God says there will be no profaning the land. And if you choose to stay in the land and profane it, outwardly rebel against my commandments, you're going to die. That's as simple as that. And we have these processes here today. This is a son who was brought before the elders. There's a process that takes place here. Elders. The mom and dad just doesn't go half-cocked and start stoning their kid. No, they're brought before the elders, and the elders hear what's going on. They hear what the story is, and then they pronounce sentence. And there were very rare, if any, cases of this ever happening in Israel. Well, most of the time it's because Israel was living just as lawless as the pagans were. They were bowing down to pagan gods and pagan idols. And so there were no real ever righteous judges in Israel, only for a short amount of time. So this probably didn't happen all that often. There's not too many written records of this actually occurring too often in Israel. So the point being is here, we don't need to get caught up in this whole thing that we believe in stoning our children. 90% of the time, you're going to get Christians who bring this argument to you because they have had this argument brought to them by atheists or agnostics. Because this is one of the top, arguments from an atheist or an agnostic who thinks the Bible is a bunch of garbage, a bunch of baloney, and who laughs at you because you believe in a magic cloud being. And I've been in creation science circles for a long time, and I've dealt with a lot of atheists who believe in evolution. And I can tell you right now that one of their big arguments is this one right here. You believe in some crazy God who wants to stone kids and wants to believe it's okay to rape women and kill people and all this stuff, and they usually bring up the Old Testament. Well, when an atheist or an agnostic brings this argument to a Christian, the Christian's answer is, and you know where I'm going with this, oh, well, see, that's the Old Testament. We don't do that anymore because that's a different God. We have a new God now. Our new God now, he's loving, and he loves you, and he wants to shine all over you and just give you his good graces, and so we have a new God now. But see, our God doesn't change. Our God is the same today, yesterday, and forever. And so that answer is not very good for an atheist. And the atheist doesn't buy that answer. And so he goes, all right, well, you go keep believing in your magic cloud being who's full of love and grace and wants to love on you, and who's a different God than this God over here who stones children. The problem is the Christian doesn't know how to answer that question because they don't understand Torah. They don't understand the Father's instructions. And so they come up with the answer that they were taught by their pastor, who was brainwashed from seminary, that we are now worshiping a new God, a new way to God, this God called Jesus, and he is the grace and the love, and he's different than that other God. That other God was a meanie. He was a meanie God. We don't like that God. He's like the crazy uncle we keep in the basement. Everybody knows he's there, but nobody wants to talk about him. That's the Old Testament. And so, atheists deserve a good answer to this. Atheists deserve an answer when asked this question to us. Hey, listen, what about the stoning of our children? The answer is these aren't children, number one. That's bad translation. Number two, the land was to be kept holy. If it's not kept holy, you put that out from among you. Either they leave or they get stoned. They don't want to leave, they get stoned. And I think you would agree probably that society could use a few more stonings nowadays. We have society who totally does not fear God. They don't fear authority at all whatsoever, and lawlessness abounds. So yeah, I think we could probably stone people. That'd probably be a big benefit to society today if we did that. So, sue me. Anyway, one thing that keeps coming up every time we do this topic is that the Christian, now the atheist, that will usually end the argument right there. But the Christian always goes back to, well, you shouldn't judge people. You shouldn't stone that. Jesus said, let you who are without sin throw the first stone. Let's examine this. Let you who are without sin throw the first stone. Well, if we examine this a little bit closer, John chapter 8, verse 6, we read that this was a trap. These Pharisees were coming to Yeshua, Jesus, to trap him. And how do we know that? Well, it says right there that it was a trap in John chapter 8, verse 6. And the reason this was a trap, the reason Jesus, Yeshua, knew this was a trap, was because when you bring a woman who's accused of adultery, outright adultery, there should be a man there as well. It says in the Torah that both the woman and the man would be punished, would be killed, would be stoned. Not just the woman. The woman's not guilty. The man is also guilty, and the man also who did committed the adultery with the woman would be stoned as well. And here we have only a woman. Number two is that there are not 2 and 3 witnesses, because it says right there in chapter 8, verse 10 of John, that there were nobody there to condemn the woman. When you bring an accusation like this, there must be on the basis of 2 and 3 witnesses. And when Jesus said, those who are without sin, you cast the first stone, he's talking directly to the Pharisees who have brought this woman to entrap him because they are sinning by breaking Torah, by bringing a woman, number one, not to a judge over to Yeshua. They should be bringing this to an elder at the gate. And number two, they should be having 2 or 3 witnesses, and there were no witnesses. So that right there is breaking Torah. You're breaking Deuteronomy 19:15. And number 3, there's no man. You're breaking Torah again by not bringing a man also to be stoned. So these Pharisees who were bringing this to Jesus to trap him were breaking Torah in doing so. And so Jesus throws it right back at him. Throws it right back at him and says, hey, listen, you who are without sin, you cast the first stone. It says in that chapter that when they brought this woman to him, he reached down like he didn't even hear him and started writing in the sand or writing in the dirt. What was he writing? Well, it doesn't tell us. But it's a pretty good argument that maybe he was writing Deuteronomy 19:15, which cites the Torah law that says to establish a matter, it must be established on 2 or 3 witnesses. You cannot bring a claim against somebody, a woman or a man, without the witness of 2 or 3 witnesses, without the statements of 2 or 3 witnesses. You can't do it. If you do so, you're breaking Torah. And that's how they were trapping him. They were hoping he was going to say, yeah, let's stone her. Well, wait a minute. There's got to be a witness. You just broke Torah. You're a lawless individual. They were trapping him. Well, they were sinning already by bringing a woman without the 2 or 3 witnesses. So, and number one, they weren't going to a judge. Jesus was not an authority in the temple. He was teaching in the temple, but he was not a judge authority in the temple. And not only that, but where's the man? It takes 2 to tango, right? It takes 2 to tango. Where's the man at? They're breaking Torah by not bringing the other partner in this. It was a trap, and Jesus, Yeshua, saw right through it. Now, we need to mention that this story in John chapter 8 does not appear in any of the earliest text, Greek text that we have. It does not also appear in the Aramaic Peshitta. So there is higher upper level arguments amongst biblical theologians with pointy heads and pointy hats that this snippet of scripture right here in John chapter 8 didn't even exist and was not added until about 500 years after Yeshua in the 6th century maybe. That's when it first appearing in Greek texts. But the earliest Greek texts none of them have this story of the woman who was caught in the act of adultery. Only the later text. So was it there? Was it not? I don't know. Either way, it doesn't matter. What matters is that these people were breaking Torah by bringing this woman to try and catch Yeshua, Jesus, in an act of breaking Torah. So it's a catch-22. They broke Torah trying to catch Jesus in breaking Torah. But it didn't work. Jesus saw right through it because he knew the Torah. And today's Christian has no idea what the Torah says, has no idea that you establish a matter based on 2 or 3 witnesses, has no idea that that once a woman is caught in adultery, the man also is stoned, not just the woman. But God's going to come back one day. And when this great tribulation happens that I believe is going to happen, we're going to see 2 witnesses come upon this earth. And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt when they show up because there's 2 or 3 witnesses when they come around this earth. And it's said when they come around that the earth hates them because everywhere they go, destruction follows. And these 2 witnesses are going to bring down hellfire and tarnation on this earth because of their lawlessness. And they're going to pay deeply. And so that's all it takes is 2 or 3 witnesses to establish a matter. So anyway, I just want to bring that up. We need to talk about these things because we always, as Torah observant believers, those who wish to follow the commandments of the Father and to keep his commandments, because we know that that's how we love our Messiah. That's how we love our God. That's how we love the Father, is to follow his ways and to keep his commandments. And so people think you're crazy by keeping these commandments, and they ask these things, hey, you believe in stoning your children? No, I don't believe in stoning my children. I believe in instructing my children. But one day when we're again among the righteous and amongst the Father in his New Jerusalem, when he comes down and establishes his kingdom here on earth, you better... I got a phone call. Anyway, that's it. You got my point. Go home, read your Bible. Thanks.